Hi, my name is Benedict. Today's video is going to be about two things, but the main driver or the main name that we have for the program being a review of N-Track Studio has been half of the catalyst for the stuff that I think should be discussed. And as I'll show you, I'm not going to be the first person to start to discuss this, but I think it needs to be discussed a lot more by a lot more people. Hopefully this is a thing that you'll stick with me, and if you feel like this is part of a conversation you want to be part of, please understand that a conversation needs to be polite and mannered, that I'm going to be putting forward points of view and discussion things. Therefore, attempts to just name call are not going to be responded to at best. Okay, N-Track Studio. N-Track Studio, let's look at their publicity for it. So it covers several different platforms. Okay, that's kind of cool, I guess, especially if you're one of those people who thinks they want to do music on their phone as well as on their computer. To me, that's anathema. A phone is just not a professional working environment as far as I'm concerned, but that's my experience. So, Studio 9, N-Track's been around for a long time, and quite honestly, it's always looked like, simple word, a toy. But there's a new GUI. They've done a good amount of redesign work, and suddenly it looks nice, and it looks like it might be an enjoyable place to work. So kudos on that bit. New in version 9, claiming to do this whole, guitar pedal and amp sim, what have you. I'm not really a fan of that kind of stuff. If you follow me, you know I'd rather create it from scratch. But to be fair, I have 30 years in this game, so for somebody who's appearing out of nowhere, they're probably going to go, oh, well, that's the easier way of getting there. Is the better way of getting there? That's going to come down to, I guess, what happens. What you get is piano roll. Piano roll is, on the surface, good. Looks very good. Step sequencer, I used briefly. There's an on-screen drum kit, but then I couldn't work out how to use it. The guitar amp I only briefly used on a synth. I wasn't trying to, kerrang with it at all, so I have no particular opinion on whether it sounds good or not, but you'll see I have some issue with it later. The vocal thing, the vocal tuning, I didn't look at all. Again, they make some bold claims. Song tree integration, just not my box of sardines at all. And their built-in effects. A drum machine and claim all kinds of really high-end functionality, as well as rewire, so we could rewire into Reason. One of the problems I have with that is if they were up to date, they'd realize that Reason no longer operates under rewire. Despite inventing rewire, they've stepped away from it because of their rack VST, which makes a lot of sense. But rewire as a technology still exists, and they still have it. Good on them. They've had it for ages. Rewire is an old technology. Inbuilt tuner and all kinds of visualization stuff, which again, I'm not really a fan of. Seems great, really does. So yeah, okay, that looks like it's worth looking at now. It looks like they've joined the big boys. So let's look at buy. And this is all really important because of what we're going to discuss later when we have a look. Something about pricing, I don't know what they're trying to say there. Maybe they're trying to say to me their pricing's too high and they know it? That just seems really weird. It looks like they're trying to be noble, but the problem is, why should they need to be noble if they have given noble pricing in the first place? So let's look at pricing. So for the basic standard version, which I will admit is pretty well featured against some of the competitors, at least on the surface, is $69. But if we were to go back and look at the best doors for beginners, you would see that Studio One Prime is $0. Yes, it has more limits than N-Track, but it's a significantly different proposal or proposition as a piece of software. Reaper is $60. So what do these guys add for their extra $9 above what Reaper provides? Now, we'll all know that I'm not the massive Reaper fan that a lot of people think I should be, but I'm now doing this high track count mix in Reaper, and despite some frustrations, which are partly just learning key commands and trying to learn not to do what I would normally do in Reason, it's doing the job. Having gotten rid of the whatever I ran the script or was doing the review that caused it to crash, I've had no particular issues with Reaper. So what have N-Track got for $9? And I know $9's not a lot of money, but what are they doing that betters Reaper? If you then want to get into the extended version, it becomes $139. Now, Bitwig, 16-track, fair enough, limited to 16-track as opposed to unlimited, but unlimited is a useless number. How many tracks is the average musical mix likely to have? 16 is probably pretty decent, especially for a beginner. Remember, our focus here is primarily beginners. So, another $40. What's that extra $40 got over Bitwig, which is a really, really impressively good little bit of software? Or, well, you know I'm not a big fan of subscription services, $20 a month or whatever it is for Reason, which gives you a massive number of instruments and effects and a beautiful workflow. So between Bitwig and Reason, or about the same price, I can't remember the exact numbers, but about the same price for the mid version of Studio One, what have N-Track got to compete with this? Okay, new GUI does look nice, and it gives the impression of fulfilling their promise of being simple to use. Good on them, big move from what they had before. Okay, loops aren't my ball of wax. Sample instruments and all kinds of inbuilt sounds, again, not my ball of wax. I don't want that kind of stuff. Although they do say they've got these instruments, but saying it and delivering it are different things. And now they're saying they've got their iconic guitar amp, bass amp. I am sorry to say, but Ignite technology is not exactly iconic. They are not a serious name. They are a name, but without trying to be mean, overselling the pony. And convolution, not a great idea for reverbs. I know some people love them, but there's a reason that they are not central to the industry. Again, we've got those choices. Between the different versions, there's not a lot of difference. You basically get everything that you need in the $69 version. But again, before you go, oh wow, that's super cheap, look at two things. A, it's $9 more than Reaper, which is robust. I don't love it, but it's robust. It's a good piece of software. Even if I don't seem to rave about it, it's a good piece of software. Yeah, you're getting sandbanks and what have you, more stuff, but based on what I've gotten in here, I don't think I'd get those things for free. So obviously, I do not love this thing, but they make pretty big promises. So let's see, does this live up to it? This is the program. Yes, it does look nice. I did the usual thing that I do, is I try and make a simple piece of electronic music. No loops, no vocals with auto-tune or any of that kind of rot, because if we can make the simple stuff, the fancy stuff should work. If we can't make the simple stuff easily, and remember, these guys' promise is that we make using a DAW easy. If I can't do these things easily, then the hard stuff's not worth it at all. So here's where I got to. stop that. See there, you realise I'm starting to look around. There's some of what's here is going to be my fault, but with over 30 years in this industry, I've had nothing but trouble with this. And you see there where I've moved, I started writing at the beginning of the sequence, as is the right way to do it. And I used there's one instrument in there is surge, but mostly I used reason rack. The reason I used it is because I wanted to be able to focus on the composing, and I didn't feel like I could do that struggling with their inbuilt sounds. I then said, okay, look, I will try to be very fair and go back and deliver a version of this using their inbuilt sounds. And that's where the wheels really started to fall off. That's why these are dragged out. And you'll see that, unfortunately, this envelope, we'll see if we can move it. And I honestly don't know how to move it. And that's the disturbing thing. I've moved these things and their envelopes haven't gone with it. Probably there's a solution to that, but the fact that it hasn't done it is less than ideal. Part of what I wanted to show you was that while mostly it worked and the sounds are great, it handles Reason's rack plugin quite well until I did the automation, and then it doesn't work. It's all kind of juddery and stuttery. Not actually that good. So fair enough, but if it was only one error, we'd say, okay, fair enough, benefit of the doubt. But it's non-stop errors. You'll see that I've copied, just the old try and drag and copy. And just about every time I tried that, things moved in weird ways. Looking at the manual, I couldn't find what it was that I'm apparently doing wrong. And remember, this is supposed to be simple. So you'd think that they're simple, you would probably use the same kinds of key commands and key system as just about everybody else. Why invent something new that isn't immediately obvious to somebody when you haven't created something that's better? And no, they've created something that's worse. So if we go back to the beginning, not super obvious, but you notice the kick drum's missing from the beginning. The same is the case here, because I found that just about every time I moved stuff around, bits of MIDI went missing. And you'll see here, this and this are literally the same thing. But what do I see? Well, it's all dragged off to different places. Now, fair enough, someone might go, oh, but you're stupid. No, that's a stupid thing to say. If I'm making errors, fair enough, but again, why am I making errors with my level of experience in a program that supposedly is going to make it simpler than every other DAW, whilst being as pro as every other DAW? Serious problems, so things keep going missing. I'm losing the composition, so I just gave up. I had seriously got the poopies with this after wasting hours and hours on trying to make it behave the way that any DAW, even Reaper, would behave, and it wouldn't. All it did was make me keep losing my work. So that's why there's really nothing to show their inbuilt sounds. Yes, this is the inbuilt drum sounds. And a pad sound. You might note that pad sound is far too loud. Every sound of theirs that I tried was far too loud. And I'd like to put a really rude swear word in there because I want you to understand that it wasn't just a few dB over loud. Everything was like 12 dBs louder than it should be. And trying to turn the levels down kind of didn't really cut it. It's really hard to actually manage levels in here. And if we're pro, we should know about gain staging. We should know that giving people a sound that's right there at or above 0 dB, as in clipping the moment you press a key, is not remotely professional. It's not the way it's done anywhere. Okay, they may choose to subscribe to a different standard from that which Reason does. Reason subscribes to a minus 12 dB standard. So I, as a patch maker, when I make patches, if it's a polyphonic patch, the rule is that I play 4 keys at a decent velocity, and that 4-note chord should peak at about 12 dB. That means that almost any sound that anybody auditions from my packs, anybody else's sound packs, should be roughly adequate within the mix. That none of those sounds that you bring in should make your mix go by being at about or above 0 dB. But every single sound here was at or above 0 dB, just too expletive deleted loud. Really, really seriously unprofessional. So it became impossible to work with. Things that are about it that are good is MIDI is actually nice and clear. MIDI looks nice. You can spread this out across several windows. Actually, let me just grab that for you. Right, there we are. This is a screenshot that I took of the working project. This is when it was, well, before it was all going off the rails. And it was working okay. I was having some serious clunky issues, but I was, moving more forward than backward. It was when I started to try to, make this more fair that it went from moving more forward to just moving more backward than anything. So we'll see the three windows. The main one that you're seeing in the middle monitor, I had the MIDI window, which, as I said, is on its own quite nice and clear. And the mixer. The mixer window at one stage was attaching itself to the monitor and staying within the monitor, and then ever after it kind of didn't. It seemed like there was something that I did, but I could never find the setting to undo whatever that was. But it looks nice. But after that, unfortunately, I got to say, it went downhill. But it was okay across 3 monitors. Now back to here. Let's slide back over. Yes. We have the MIDI. So if we double click, we open up, we've got a couple of ways of viewing MIDI. Oh, that's drum. We can rearrange. It has a bit of a nasty habit of making everything like Duplo size. While I can see that might be nice for some people, it annoys the patootie out of me. Now, let me press C3 on my keyboard. C5. That's 2 octaves off. Now, it's a bit of a known thing in MIDI and sequences that they're prone to being 1 or 2 octaves off, partly because different manufacturers decided to have different standards for where middle C was, and it's not uncommon to be 1 or 2 octaves off. So press this key. So to get a C3, I have to press C5. Most sequences give you an offset to fix that. If it's in here, I didn't find it. So I had to compose offset the whole time. If I didn't find it, I may be partly my bad, but again, 30 years of doing this, couldn't find the fix. So you're saying to the beginners that this is middle C, C5. Not good. Not good at all. Putting notes in is okay, but clunky compared to a modern, evolved sequencer. You can rearrange notes from the end, but you can't rearrange notes from the front. Not awful, but we were happy when Reason gave us the ability to edit from the front, and it was considered somewhat, well, thank you, you've finally done that. So N-Track, not good enough. You can view sequences as a part, so whichever part I click on, which is like the clip, then it will show me that. Okay, that's quite nice. It will also show me here which track that I'm seeing. That is nice. That really is nice. You can also click on the song, and then it'll open up, it'll really show you which track you're viewing, and then you can bring the whole composition into focus. So if I have everything visible, let's get rid of the drums because they're just a bad idea. We'll get rid of those. But this is our composition. Again, just defaulting to stupid Gumby size. But this is actually quite good. I really quite like the visibility. It's clear, it's clean. That's the one bit that I think does stand out really rather nicely, and this is so clean and clear. I can choose which I'm focusing on, therefore which I'm able to interact with. I sort of seem to be able to interact with other things, but then I sort of can't. It kind of gets confusing. But the ability to turn things on and off, great. That's probably the best thought out thing in the whole program. When you come to actually get to use it, though, it starts to show the fact that it's, sorry, a bit poorly designed, but whoever did the GUI at this point did quite a nice job. The mixer itself, that's quite nice too. You can choose different sizes for tracks. So if you're getting into having quite a lot of tracks, you can rearrange how they go, and that's nice. Its visibility on the surface is fairly good, but then somehow it's prone to seeming different. I don't quite know what goes on there, but somehow it changes. Okay. There was something in the masters, but it's disappeared. I never run anything without something in the masters just to make sure that things don't explode. There was another reason rack instance in there with the usual mastering thing on it. It's not showing. Don't know what's happened there. Sends are okay, but I found that just about every time I created a new track, it took a lot of actions before the send actually worked properly. It would be sort of half grayed out, and well, it was a mess. But you can have your instrument. This is their instruments, and again, it behaves differently in different situations. So if I click on that, it asks me like, oh, do you want to open a new instrument? When in reality, if I just want to see the instrument that I was using, I have to go here. Maybe there's a good reason for that, but I don't get it. But this is not what you might call professional synth making. This is just terrible. I'd say this is some old bit of code that somebody said, ooh, let's put a funky modern skin on it so it seems like it's, easier, man, for people who are, and it's like, yeah, I probably won't say any more of that because I'm not going to be kind or polite. This is an atrocity. This is a kind of VST design that happened in the early days where it was just too much skeuomorphism and too much just throw everything on the page. It's like vomit on the page. Now, if I could make it work, I wouldn't be quite so brutal, but I couldn't actually work out how to make it work. Again, 30 years in the business, and I'm floored by this thing, but worse, I don't care to know how it works because I don't get the feeling that I'm going to end up with anything better than I've ever had before. I don't even get the feeling I'm going to end up with anything equal to what I've had before. And yes, I'm being brutal because they made a lot of promises, and we're going to get into that in the second half. So mixing, yeah, it kind of looks nice. You can build auxiliaries. You can do buses, but I didn't get to that point. Sends, and you've got lots of options for things. But, okay, that shows what's there. This one doesn't. It's inconsistent with how it behaves. If we go to add something new, it's telling me that the name of my plugin is actually the developer name. No other door I've encountered does this. It knows that my name is the developer. I know because I developed this. This is my toy. It pulls through the Cakewalk plugins, unlike a lot of other places, and it allowed me to actually set one in. I set in the phaser because it's a nice sounding thing. Then when I reopened the program, it said, oh no, you can't use that. Come on, guys. So it's got the ability to load quite a lot of things, but as I've shown you, just about all of the all of their built-in things. Actually, they seem to have two different versions of built-in things, and honestly, they're all just as confusing and as bad as each other. So I ended up really not using any of them at all. It seemed to run VSTs pretty well, with the exception of that error that I can't easily show you in the reason rack. That was an automation thing. Whose fault that is, I don't know, so I'm not going to point fingers on that. But effects are confusing. There's N-track and NFX. Separates out VSTs different ways. And then this 32-bit stuff, DirectX, what? And just confusing. Maybe I didn't spend enough time with the effects setup or whatever, but honestly, why this kind of level of mess? So it looks nice. We'll run through the good and bad. Yes, it looks quite nice, but it looks nice on their side, not as much when you try and use it. The multi-track MIDI layout is really nice, and if it worked as smoothly and as, easy as they suggest, I would say it would be a brilliant starter DAW for somebody who hasn't got a lot of experience in MIDI and what have you. But it doesn't work, so I'm going to say it void like the plague. It also has an EQ. Now, where do we get the EQ? F3, EQ. Everything has an EQ. And that sort of seems like it's quite good. Okay, let's choose something that's going to run here. Did you notice how you didn't notice anything different? Yeah, me too. 15 dB of cut and boost, it's not to sniff at. It's not 18 dB, it's not 24 dB, but 15 dB should be noticeable. But I found that just about whatever I did, I got maybe at best what sounded like about 3 dB of anemic EQ. Again, maybe this is some kind of user error, but for a simple DAW being used by somebody with 30 years of experience, something's wrong. And then I saw, ooh, dynamic. We've got the option for dynamic EQ. Okay. That's a cool thing. Visually easy to work out what's going on. Looks great. So I'm thinking, oh, that MIDI and this EQ, we should have something nice. But it doesn't seem to actually do anything. And then after this, it gets horribly clunky. So they've borrowed some visual ideas from some people who are better than them, but rather than actually embedding them, they've just made a mess. So yes, in terms of good and bad, the EQ, it looks well featured, but it doesn't work. The bad is, as you've already worked out, it's clunky and very broken. I showed you the stuff at the beginning, how they promised it was going to be easy and pro this and pro that. It's fibby. As far as I'm concerned, this program is little more than fibs. And as I showed you in terms of questioning the value compared to heavyweight competitors, legitimate players of the right game, it's at best poor value. So now we're going to step off and look at the second part of the program here, which rolls from this, and particularly from that good and bad, or the bad, the word fibby here. Notice I did not call them liars. I've said it's fibby. A fib is something that's... Now, this is a massive problem. I'm referring to it increasingly as an emperor's new clothes syndrome. Now, just to recap for any of you whose parents didn't read Hans Christian Andersen, the emperor is a rather selfish, self-obsessed tool. He wants himself a new set of threads, and he's rather about the whole process. He hires a couple of, con men who have no ability whatsoever but talk a big talk. They make all kinds of amazing promises to him. and they can't deliver on any of those promises whatsoever. And when it comes time to deliver the clothes to him, rather than admitting that they were lying sacks of, well, dirty, rotten scoundrel, they actually deliver him invisible clothes. Rather than acknowledging that they are lying to him, he goes along with the lie. He even takes it up and makes more of this lie, and then goes out in public to show his public, his masses, his new outfit. And you know what they see? Yeah, the Emperor's new clothes is vaporware. But while some people try to suggest, oh, well, it was those bad clothes makers who made ridiculous claims, a lot of this really is on that emperor, because he hired stupid people. He wasn't prepared to admit that he was stupid, and he went along with the lies that he encouraged them to make, and then lived in this fantasy land that it's not until a child, somebody who's unprepared to play this game, which is the role that I'm putting myself in now, not being childish, but being childlike, to actually call the fact that this and a couple of other things that I'm going to show you as representative of what's happening, the music game, and to a great extent the world in general and the internet, but the music game's what I care about. The music game is increasingly turned into a case of the Emperor's new clothes, and that the people who are buying this stuff are the Emperor. They are buying stupid, pointless lies and then arguing till they're blue in the face about how clever they are that they're walking around with their meat and potatoes swinging in the breeze. This is not healthy stuff. So let's look at a couple of them. Unison Audio, MIDI Pack, Drum Monkey. These special individuals, and I'm not the first person digging into this, there are quite a few other YouTubers now really getting into this, are selling things for massive amounts of money, making massive claims, and preying in particular, and this is what all of these do, preying in particular on newbies, people coming into this business thinking that in 5 minutes that they can have Grammy Award-winning hits, man. And that if they download these particular things like the MIDI pack and now Drum Monkey, that for $300 has no demo and appears to be less well featured than many free drum machines, there is so much spamminess amongst this. It's massive amount of fibbing. It's a case of the Emperor's new clothes, and people who get these things then turn up raving about how great they are because they don't want to admit that they are swinging in the breeze. The other one that a few, good names have gotten involved in having discussions on, in outing what's happening, is Harrison. Dan Worrell pointed out very eloquently, very elegantly, as is Dan's style, that the mix strip that they made massive claims on their site about being analog, this, that, and the other, cancels perfectly with the simplest of digital EQs. Paul Third has done the same thing, shown how these things cancel out with the EQ built into Reaper, which is just a perfect straight vanilla digital EQ. So there are massive claims about how analog these things are based upon their amazing pro history. And this is Harrison, who apparently we should take seriously. Apparently their discs are used for the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller and all kinds of movies and this, that, and the other. So this is it's kind of like the Queen of England coming out and selling sea monkeys. It's crazy that manufacturers are selling things using fibs about what their product actually is, what their product is going to do. Whilst we're on the thing of Harrison, we actually pulled a review that I'd started to make on Mixbus. Now I'm going to bring it back up here. I don't have any of the review stuff, but I was doing a mix in it, and I chose mixed bucks as a thing worth presenting because, it's so well priced, and it's so this, that, and the other. But the more time I spent in it, the more I realised it was a pile of fibs. They'd taken an open source door, crippled it, given you an option to spend more money to buy a still crippled version of it. They've added a tiny amount of saturation in only one place, or one or two places, and most of what you've got there is digital as it comes and not even particularly nice. Not lovely. Definitely not the equal of what their marketing says it is. So again, it's Emperor's New Clothes, and people get this and they go, oh wow, but it's so great, because A, they don't know any better, and B, they think it's great because somebody told them that it's great. So to back that, they just keep saying how great it is. That's the equivalent of me setting myself up to be some kind of food and nutrition expert and saying how great McDonald's food is. Even McDonald's acknowledge that their food is not really intended to be eaten all day, every day, and it probably won't work well for you if you do it. But we've got this massive amount of stuff that's happening. So please, if you think I'm being unfair to N-Track, or N-Track, if you think I'm being unfair to you, then I am happy to have an open discussion about this, but it's got to be a mature discussion, not just name-calling and mudslinging, because I'm trying to have I'm concerned conversation here with the world at large. Let's work out why we're doing this. And rather than just saying, let's blame it on they, let's actually look at ourselves and go, why is it that manufacturers, and if we look at N-Track, when we looked at their page, let's have a look here. When we look at their info page, it all comes across as quite sort of factual. Here's the facts, here's the things that you get. The more we get into the new stuff, the more it starts to suggest. See, look at the difference here. Make your guitar sound huge, blah, 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 blah. That's fair marketing. They're just saying, look, we've got a guitar amp. It'll help your guitar to sound more. Fair enough. I got no argument with that marketing whatsoever. But something happened. Because suddenly it becomes iconic. It's not iconic. And this is not what's called exaggeration and puffery or hyperbole. This is a supposedly provable fact. And industry leading. I didn't even look at their vocal or their auto-tune plugin, so I have no idea. But if it's not actually powered by auto-tune, if it's not actually auto-tune or Melodyne or, well, they're basically the known industry-leading names. They aren't necessarily the best solutions, but they're the industry-leading names. Then, massive Pinocchio nose here. So what happened between them just laying out honestly their features, and fairly and legitimately, and making these insane, fibby promises, which they cannot back? I wouldn't mind if they could back them. If I got in there and found that their guitar amp really was, if it turns out that it was powered by Marshall, okay, fair enough. If I had plugged in my guitar and go, oh my God, then I'd be like, yeah, more power to you. But I get into their program and find that the only possible way in which it's leading the industry is by being really terrible. It's leading the industry astray. So please, let's work out how and why we're encouraging ourselves. How are we being like the emperor in this Emperor's New Clothes of encouraging into our castle these fibbing fiends who give us garbage that we would then go around going, oh, look at me. Aren't I special and clever? Because I bought Unison Drum Monkey. No, all you're doing is proving how stupid you are. Please, let's get rid of this Emperor's New Clothes syndrome, because it's doing a massive amount of damage to music. It's doing a huge amount of damage to newbies, people who come into the business, who might come in genuinely and try not to get involved in any of this stuff, but get swayed by it, and therefore are just completely led off track, and then they faceplant, as is going to happen when you come and get told, this is pro, this is the best, and it's unusable, and they feel bad. This creates depression. This creates serious medical problems for people. Plus, how can you lie straight in bed if you're the manufacturer doing this, going, oh yes, we don't care what we tell people so long as we get their cash. Because you know what? Well, by the time they realise that we shafted them and that we just sent them out there with their swinging in the breeze, they won't want to admit what's really happened. So myself and a few other people who you'll see from here, and you'll start to see them on YouTube increasingly, I hope, are starting to say, no more. This Emperor's New Clothes game is not okay, ever. It's not legal even. You're creating falsities and selling your product on them. Plus, it's not okay. I'm a musician of 30 years. I have some standing in this game, but more importantly, I care about rock and roll. And this is not rock and roll. Kiss saying, you want the best, you got the best. Yeah, maybe technically not true, but you know what? You sit down to a Kiss show, you get pretty damn good. So, hyperbole, exaggeration and puffery, yes, with a great big puff of smoke and bat wings. Fair enough. But what's going on here is not that. It's just scamming money off people. And shame, shame, shame on you. In track, if you didn't realise you're doing it, fire your marketing person. Fire them hard, fire them now. Harrison, if you don't realise what's going on, you bloody well should have, because I'm not the first person raising this issue. The fact that your products do not do what they say they do in the marketing. But more importantly, you as an individual watching this, rather than buying into that invisible clothing that actually just makes you more miserable, less able to do the thing that you wanted to do, simply say no more. And don't buy those things. When things make wild claims about duplicating some old piece of gear that you possibly never heard of or have never seen, and there's a reason why people stopped using them in the first place, just simply go, no. When I'm looking for a compressor, I'm looking for a compressor that compresses. I'm not looking for a compressor that's dressed in invisible clothes. So, a little different from what any of us were expecting. I actually thought this was going to be a nice ride. I really did. But hopefully we can create some change in the thing that we care about. Let's clean up rock and roll. You have a great day now.